Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most? And do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right, no extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
Welcome to The Wealth Flow. My guest today is Marcus Maloney. Marcus is an investor, a value investor, and portfolio holder of both residential and commercial units. Marcus has been named the Equity King for his impressive ability to find real estate opportunities with massive amounts of equity. Marcus is a high school dropout who went from having a GED to completing his MBA in 2011. Although his education has a major impact on his investment philosophy, the real impact came from his upbringing. As a boy, he grew up on a 59-acre farm 45 minutes south of Chicago. Marcus is a father, a husband, and Marcus's hard work has allowed him to complete over 3.3 million in wholesale transactions, as well as some very interesting things that he's doing right now with shared living. So, Marcus, welcome to The Wealth Flow.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to your listeners here on The Wealth Show. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to be here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Marcus, I always like to start really with where you grew up and then what eventually led you to real estate. So, yeah, let's share your story.
Sure. So, you know what? Just like you said in the bio, I grew up on a 59-acre farm just south of Chicago, about 45 minutes south of Chicago. So I had the best of both worlds, right? You know what? Had the farm background, the agricultural background, but at the same time, being so close to Chicago, we get the inner city aspect as well. So I call it, the dynamics of knowing the best of both worlds. But my background getting started, right? We were mostly on the farm, and my grandfather, he was a sharecropper down in the South, and he moved north and brought my mom and her siblings with them. And what he really taught us at an early age was the value of buying low and selling high, right? So, and I'm pretty sure no one has ever used this investment strategy, but we got started by flipping pigs. Yes,
Oh, wow.
You guys heard it right. Flipping pigs. So we were flipping livestock, right? So all of our classmates, at the beginning of the school year, you want to go to school with the newest gym shoes and the newest pants and designer shirts and everything like that. Well, we wasn't afforded that. What we had to do was he taught us how to earn money by investing. So flipping pigs. So how did you do that? So at the end of the school year, we would go to the local auction, livestock auction, and we would buy piglets. You can buy these piglets for $5, $10, $15 a piece. And as you know, pigs will eat almost anything you put in front of them. So over the summer, me, my brother, and my cousins, our job was to fatten these piglets up as much as possible. And then we will return them back to the auction right before school starts. And that will be our money for our school clothes shopping. So we would buy them $10, $15 per piglet. by over the summer, they were up to, 150, 200 pounds,
Huh.
and they were sold by the weight. So eventually we were cashing out on some of these pigs at like $200 a pop, $250 a pop. So imagine that return on investment. For 3 months, you start with $15, and at the end of your investment, you're at $250. I haven't calculated that ROI, but it's safe to say that it's pretty high, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's how I understood the value of a dollar and how to invest. So that was one thing that we learned. Now, how did it translate into real estate? Was my mom, she was a risk taker, or I would say a calculated risk taker. She worked for the state of Illinois as a nurse. She ran a unit and everything like that. And she decided to quit and follow her entrepreneurial dream, which was to work with kids with failed adoptions, things like that, wards of the state. But before she did that, she bought 2 raggedy houses, totaling, I think, around $30,000 for the both of the houses. One was like 10,000, the other one was like $15,000, $20,000. So again, being on that agricultural background, hard work, sweat equity, it was up to me, my brothers and cousins to work with the contractors, cleaning out these houses, doing all of this kind of stuff. And we looked at it as this is just work for us. It's not an investment. It's just more work for us to do, right? As young men, young teenagers. But what she showed us was at the end of one, she flipped it and she made about $30,000. And that was more than her salary for the year as a nurse. And this was back in 88, 89. So flipping wasn't a thing. HGTV wasn't a thing, all of these shows wasn't a thing. She just had a keen eye. She said, you know what? I can buy this for practically nothing and put a little bit of money into it and then resell it. And that's what she did. So that first one, she sold it, made a profit, showed us the check, and we were like, wow, that was a lot of money. And she gave us a little bit for our sweat equity, and then the other one, she kept and we rented it out, right? And we still own that property in our portfolio to this day. So one of the things that I tell people is look at the dynamics of those 2 investment strategies. One was a flip. Okay, you flip 90 to, let's say 180 days, you get paid out. Right, we made $30,000. But could you imagine that rental that we've owned since let's just say 90 to all the way to 2023, how much we've made off of that property? Yeah. And it's completely paid off. So that kind of shifted my thinking to know that really the money is in holding assets and not flipping assets. So that's basically my background, Keith. I don't want to bore the audience. I just like to give them, a fresh perspective. I did drop out of high school, literally, 2 to 3 months before it was time for me to graduate because I didn't think I was going to graduate. And during that time, I said, my mom was like, well, what are you going to do? We don't accept that. She's a college grad and everything like that. So I said, okay, well, I'm just going to go and take my GED. And come to find out, I went and took it, didn't study anything like that and passed it. So now I went from the back of the class thinking I wasn't going to graduate to now I'm ahead of all of my peers and everything like that with my high school equivalency completed. So I went from the back of the bus to the front of the bus really, really quickly. And I didn't always find myself in that position. So there was a few things that I learned, as a youth, as a minor to really help me towards my career now today.
Yeah. And we were talking just a little bit, Marcus, before the show. I maybe want to go back to the 59-acre farm and just hear a little bit more. Obviously, your mom played a huge role in impacting, your journey towards real estate. Just being able to see those 2 instances. That's two exit plans right there that people typically do in real estate, right? And she was able to show that. So that's awesome. But in your bio, it talks about kind of looking up the stars and with the frogs kind of croaking in the background and all that.
Yep.
But yeah, tell us a little bit about where do you think that came from? Just the vision of someday owning a skyscraper or whatever it may be.
You know what? I've always been a dreamer, right? And my grandmother, she always instilled that in us, to dream and dream big. And if you can dream it, right, you just got to put forth the work and you can obtain that.
For
So
sure.
yeah, I used to go out and spend time, just laying out, looking up at the stars and hearing those frogs in the background and just thinking about, skyscrapers and property and everything like that. And at the time I didn't know, you know, it may sound stupid now, but I didn't know I loved real estate. We would take our trips in the downtown Chicago, and that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to drive down Michigan Avenue and look at all of the skyscrapers, during the day and the night. And honestly, I still do that. Just the other day, I was back home in Chicago from Phoenix, and I took the long way and drove through downtown, and I was just still amazed by the skyscrapers. So what I do want to tell people is look back as a young kid. What did you have a passion for? What did you really, really like as a young kid? And 9 times out of 10, that's your career focus or your path that you're supposed to be on. That's your passion. That's your destiny position. And I didn't know that until, decades later that's really, really what I loved.
Yeah, that's neat. And I kind of had something similar happen a little later in life, but where we had to go to Houston for I think at the time it was my fiance's. She had some kind of work deal down there, and just being in the downtown area with these buildings all around, and really just kind of dreaming, kind of like what you used to do on the farm. So just thinking, gosh, there's a lot of money here, and it's just there's so much out there. There's got to be some for me as well. So. But
Yep. And it definitely is. It
for
definitely
sure,
is.
for sure. What about, so you went from, taking your GED, you went back to school, ended up, getting your master's degree. So congratulations on that. That's awesome. But tell us a little bit what led to that, and then eventually led you into, your real estate.
Sure. So my brother, he was complete opposite, of me. He was the go to school, get the good grades, be a well-versed student. And he went off to college, and everybody in the family celebrated him, right? Hey, you know what? Congratulations. You're going off to college. And I wanted some of that, but I was a high school dropout with the GED and everything like that. So after my kind of turns, being entrepreneurial, I said, you know what? Let me just go to school and at least have some education under my belt in the event that my entrepreneurial opportunities don't work out for me. I still have a backup plan.
Yeah.
So 10 years later, right, I went to school. I kind of followed my brother's path, went to school, got my bachelor's degree, and then decided to go and get my master's degree, my MBA, because again, it kind of led back to real estate. I always knew that I got to be able to run numbers, got to be able to do spreadsheets, got to be able to understand pro formas and, net operating income, everything like that. And some accounting. So I was like, you know what? Business is the avenue I need to go into. And lo and behold, I got my MBA, and although I don't use it per se, I still use it in instances throughout my career, because again, when you're doing rentals and shared living, you got to be able to run these numbers and do pro formas. And, when you're raising capital, like, Keith, you got to be able to articulate, the essence of this deal in order to get investors to want to partner up with you. So It's a good thing to have. It's a credibility piece that I use also, so I'm not just, someone out here that's just trying to raise money, but I do have that finance background as well.
Yeah, that's great. And so what did you eventually get into first when it comes to real estate?
So, seeing my mom, she did the flip, she did the rental property. Years ago, I moved from Illinois to Phoenix, Arizona, and I was promised a job offer. And once I moved my family here, 1,500 miles away, the job offer was rescinded. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Why not start really honing in on real estate, right? So on my way over, I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about direct mail and they were talking about marketing, and I had no idea what they were talking about. They were basically talking about marketing direct to seller for wholesale deals. And I had little to no money. I started with like a $200 First Premier credit card. And First Premier credit card is for those who have bad credit and they're trying to establish their credit. So I used that $200 as my seed capital to start my real estate career. And I just started marketing. I pulled a list of, homeowners that may be in some sort of distress. Now, here being in Phoenix, I didn't know the East Valley from the West Valley, from Central Phoenix to the North or anything like that. Only thing I knew is I needed to do something really, really quick, to take care of my wife and my 3 kids. So I just started putting out direct mail letters and got some phone calls from some sellers that were saying, hey, you know what? I may be interested in selling. Now, again, Keith, mind you, I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a mentor or anything like that. So my first deal, I got the property under contract at retail price, right? And I thought that I was going to eventually wholesale that out to somebody. The property needed, about $70K in repairs. I estimated like $20K in repairs. I had the ARV at the time in like 175 and it was worth like 170. So I did everything wrong, right? And then at the time, all of the auctions were going on here in Phoenix. So I was going to the courthouse steps, right? And I was like, hey, I got this deal. I got this deal. I got this deal. And people were looking at me crazy because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But lo and behold, I had someone that said, hey, you know what? I see you're a hustler. I see you're out here trying to make something happen. That's not a deal. I'm going to show you why. And I'm going to show you what you can do to find a deal. And that's how I really found my first mentor that really helped push my career along, the fast track. So working with him, I closed a number of deals in that first year and I started building up my war chest, started building up capital, saving everything. And then eventually I went out on my own. I learned the systems from him. And I told him in the beginning in the door, I said, hey, you know what? I'm an entrepreneur. I normally don't work for anybody. If I wanted to work for somebody, I would have stayed home and would have worked with the family. I said, but there's a venture that I want to do on my own. So he understood that. We had an agreement and built up that money. And then I just started wholesaling myself, Keith. And it was, a lot of challenging days, a lot of challenging nights, but became very, very successful at it. And then I started applying that money to more long-term rentals to really start building wealth.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And I think there's a lot there, just being in a situation where I love the fact that you went out and you made a bunch of mistakes along the way, just because, I always say massive imperfect action is really what we need to take. It's never going to be perfect to start with, right? It's always about just getting out there, getting in the arena and then figuring it out. And in doing so and really hustling, like you mentioned, somebody saw something in you that they felt like, they could pour something into. So, what do you think? Was it just going around asking people, or what do you think this gentleman saw in you that allowed you to, I guess at some point be his mentee?
Sure. So one thing, Keith, pride was too expensive at the time, right? I couldn't be prideful. I had to go and make the mistakes because I had to really learn it. So I couldn't be prideful. Pride was too expensive. So what he saw in me was just, I was willing to do whatever it took to really learn real estate. It would be times we would be at his office and he wanted to leave. And I would say, hey, you know what? I need to comp these 5 properties and I really don't know if I'm doing it right. Let's comp these properties together. And we would just go over. He would tell me, why one property value was worth X and why the other one was worth Y. And we would go over renovation cost and I really learned a lot because I was really learning the foundation. And I learned that through education is that you have to understand the foundation and the basics before you can really build that structure, right? Just like with real estate, you got to dig deep. In order to build that skyscraper, you got to build that foundation deep. And the deeper the foundation is, the higher you can build upon, that foundation. So I just wanted to learn all of the basics, ins and outs, and then lo and behold, he was like, man, you're better at comping properties and running numbers than I am. He started coming to me, asking for, what do you think the value is on this?
Yeah.
But it was really, the humility, Keith, because although I was going in with an MBA and some of these guys just had a high school diploma, that MBA meant nothing to me because they knew they were in the trenches. They knew what I didn't know. Book knowledge can only take you so far. It's that real hands-on experience. And that's what I didn't have. So I needed to learn it from them.
Yeah, yeah, and for maybe for some of the listeners who aren't familiar, I know a lot of people are familiar with wholesaling, but can you maybe just explain when you say wholesaling, what that is, and then also maybe what kind of targeted leads did you guys typically go after to
Okay.
be able to find those?
Sure. So wholesaling basically is finding a person that's in a distressed situation. Let's just say like pre-foreclosure, they have liens on the property, or they're going through bankruptcy, or they have a tenant that they recently evicted, or they live out of state and they was inherited a property. So those were the leads that we were looking for, and they had to have massive amounts of equity. So we would put in our filter 50% equity or greater, and then we would look for bankruptcy, divorce, pre-foreclosures, absentee owners that live out of state, and absentee owners. So these are landlords. And what wholesaling is reaching out to those individuals, and their property may be worth, let's just say, just to use round numbers, $100,000. We would make an offer based on the renovations, let's just say around 50 cents on the dollar, 60 cents on the dollar. So around $50,000 we would offer them for that property. And we would inform them, hey, you know what? You don't have to make any repairs. You're not paying any realtor fees. We'll pay all of the closing costs. You won't have to pay any commissions. So that really saves them, on the back end. So whatever number we pitch to them is net to the seller. Once they agree to that, we have that property under contract. Now we're in lead position with this property. We can go out and try and find a fix and flipper or end user to pay a little bit more than what we got the property under contract for. So we would go out, we would find a buyer, and say, hey, you know what? I got this property. It's worth $100,000. We got it for, we're willing to sell it for $65,000. And if they agree to pay for that property at $65,000, then we would get the delta in between. So we would get that $15,000 just on, the transaction. So it's limited risk. We wouldn't hold the property. We wouldn't buy the property, take it down or anything like that. We would just assign our interest, our contract in that property over to the end buyer for a fee of $15,000. That's basically wholesaling. Now it sounds easy, right?
Right.
There's a lot of minutia in between. You have to be marketing. You have to be a skilled negotiator. You have to be a skilled salesperson. You have to be a people person, be able to build rapport, be able to talk to people, and be able to run numbers. So it's actually one of the hardest fields to do because you have to be able to get deals a lot better than anyone else in the marketplace can get.
Yeah. And I don't know if you had this when you started, but I know my wife and I did a little bit of very little wholesaling. It didn't work out well for us. Although the place I'm sitting and doing the podcast from today, we found through pre-foreclosures. So going out, and our intent was to wholesale the deal. Then we were like, hey, you know what? This one actually fits our buy bucket. So,
let's keep it.
Yeah,
Right?
Exactly. But I know in doing that, there's a lot of competition. You mentioned it's one of the harder ones. What's nice about it is you can get started for very little money, and whether it's driving for dollars, whatever it may be. So there's not a lot of up front that you have to put in. But I know one of the fears that I originally had with it was just, gosh, if I get a deal now and I've got it under contract with earnest money, am I going to be able to close quick enough? And as you know, and I'm sure,
Mhm.
and for the listeners, if you have a good deal and it truly is a deal, finding the buyer piece of it is not a problem at all. So
Yeah. Finding that buyer, is not difficult. You just have to know where to be at,
right,
and there's different things you can use. Facebook groups, you can build an email list. You could talk to your title company, say, hey, can you pull the list of all of the cash transactions within the last 60 to 90 days, in this one zip code where I have this subject property. And then those are all your cash buyers. You just call them or send them a letter and say, hey, this is the opportunity that we have for you. But it is a lot of work. Like you said, it's low barrier to entry. I started with $200.
yeah.
And you can really get going by, like you said, driving for dollars, just looking for, the unexpected is properties up under your nose, but you just got to know exactly what to do with it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, that's neat. And so from there, you mentioned, and maybe it was a few of the wholesale deals that you held on to, but you also had some long-term rental. Is that correct?
Yeah. So what I did was, and I was talking to my accountant and she was like, hey, you know what? You're making good money, but you're paying a lot in taxes because this is all transaction based. It's all transaction based earned income, which is taxed at the highest tax bracket. So she was like, well, you know what? Some of these maybe you need to hold, you need to keep. And I was like, nah, I don't want to keep anything. I like the flow of the deal, right? The cash and everything like
Right.
that. She was like, no, trust me, you need to hold some. So I started just buying some rentals back east, back in Illinois, and I think that was not I think, but that was the best thing that I could have done because going back to our original scenario, right? Mom flipped one property
Mhm.
and she held one property. Which property had the best return on investment? The one that she held. And that's what I started to do. Me and my wife, we just started to holding as much as possible. And thank God that we did because now, as in certain areas, wholesaling has slowed down
Sure.
considerably. Now we're living off that rental income that's coming in consistently. And once we saw that, we was like, man, you know what? We need to build this thing out to where we can always have mailbox money coming in, rental money coming in. So now on a first, we have everything coming in through online payments, and our just phone just dings from rental payments coming in.
Yeah.
And that's money that we did not have to work for, and it's taxed at a lower tax bracket. And there's so many benefits to rentals, like the tax benefits, a possible appreciation, let's see what else. Your tenants is paying your mortgage down.
Okay.
All of that kind of stuff is definitely a benefit, for rentals that you don't get in transaction based real estate as far as flipping, wholesaling, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of our listeners are W-2 employees, and quite honestly, the depreciation is fantastic to be
Yep.
able to save on taxes. I too am W-2'd as well, and just from having rental property, I typically get a nice return from the IRS
Mm-hmm.
just because I'm paying through my W-2, but yet I have depreciation to be able to deduct as well. So
Yep.
pretty cool.
And Keith, one of the biggest fallacies that I hear out there is people always say, you know what, I'm just going to quit my W-2 and jump into real estate full time. I tell you right now, to your listeners, do not do that. Please do not do that because you want to be bankable, right? You want that bank when they're going to qualify you to see, oh, this person has a stable W-2 job that's paying them X amount of dollars, a month, annually, whatever, versus entrepreneurs, it's a little bit difficult because, hey, there's no baseline, right? One year you may make, 200 grand. And next year you may make 50 grand. The following year you may make,
Yeah.
125 grand. And it's hard for you to be bankable in order to really secure assets. So, if you're married and one is an entrepreneur and a spouse is, W-2, that's a perfect position, but you want to make sure that you remain bankable at all times, because when you have deals and you need that money, you'll be able to go to that bank and acquire it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Marcus, for sure. It certainly does help to have that steady income and be able to point to it, and
Yep.
tax returns that reflect income instead of a lot of losses and whatnot. So, um,
Yeah. And I learned the hard way, right? Because I had all of this transactional income, earned income coming in. So I was writing off everything,
mhm.
right? Because I didn't want to pay the government, taxes. So I was writing off everything. But then I was going to a secure loan, and it was like, well, you don't make any money. I was like, well, I do make money, but I just write everything off. And then it was like, well, but on paper, you don't make any money, so then you have to get into more riskier loan products and everything like that because of you not being bankable. So guys, please make sure you have some steady income coming
For sure.
in order to be or remain bankable. Yep.
Yeah, and then from there, having some of the rentals, you mentions in your bio about getting into some commercial stuff as well. Tell us a little bit about that. How your journey kind of moved from some of the residential to some of what you're doing today.
Sure. So a couple of things that we did with commercial is we purchased a turn of the century school. So thanks to my wife, she was out looking at some things and she saw this school that was empty and abandoned, and come to find out the school district was going to sell it. Now, this was not some large 30,000 square foot school or anything like that. Again, it was turn of the century. It had about 3 classrooms in it, and it was perfect for what my sister-in-law was looking for. She was looking for daycare. So we purchased the school, had it renovated, and she runs her daycare out of that site now. So we bought the school for a little bit of nothing. We bought the school for around $80,000. We put about another 40 into it. So we're all in. Our basis was 120, and we're getting rent at $2,300 a month just off of that one asset. So that's why in my bio I say, we look for and I secure equity deals, because I'm always looking for that return cash flow at the end of the day. It's not the quick turn, but we're always looking for that continuous cash flow. So we do that. We have that commercial building. We have some other commercial apartments that we've purchased, that we've renovated and have leased up. And now, Keith, on the commercial side of it, we're starting to do more shared living. So we have some apartment complex that we're turning into shared living spaces, because one of the things that my mom did when she was younger was she started a nonprofit. And through that, again, our social good is we work with kids that have been displaced. So we have contracts with the state of Illinois to where we house these kids, and we provide therapy, everything like that for them. So on the real estate side of it, I look at the assets and run the numbers, as traditional rentals. That way, if anything goes wrong with the contract, we can still meet, still have a nice return on investment based on traditional rental numbers, but we're actually using these properties for shared living spaces.
Yeah, that's neat. And as far as the shared living spaces, when you're kind of comparing it to what you would normally get on like a traditional long-term tenant versus this situation, what's the delta between that? Is it usually pretty
4X.
4x? Wow. Yeah.
4X. Yeah. So if we would normally rent a unit for, let's just say $800 a month, we would get 2,400.
Yeah.
2,400 off of that unit. So it's a no-brainer, right? But at the same time, I still ran the numbers as if we would only get $800 a month for that property, because the sellers, they don't know what we're going to be doing with the property. They're running their numbers off of, okay, you can get $825 a month for this property. So we purchased that asset at $800 to $825 a month for that asset, but knowing that we're going to be, 3 to 4x in that property.
Yeah, that's a great business model for sure. Is there and there's a pretty strong demand for having enough spaces for that? I mean, I guess there's no shortage of folks, unfortunately, that are kind of displaced. But tell us a little bit about that as far as the supply piece.
Yeah, it's definitely a strong demand for it right now. If you look at, because right now across the country, what do we have? We have an affordable housing issue,
Yeah.
right? And not only that, on top of the affordable housing issue, in certain states, we have the immigrants coming in that's being bused from Texas to some of the Midwestern states. They need housing. And through these government programs, you could provide housing to these individuals, and that check will come directly from the government and not from that individual person. So, you have to look at, in the midst of chaos, in the midst of critical things that's going on in the environment, as an investor, there's always opportunity. You just have to clear your lens from what's being told and look at the story behind it. So when I was just in Chicago, I'll give you a quick story. I was just in Chicago, and everybody was talking about, they're busing all of these immigrants up from Texas and, from Arizona and everything like that. And they're sleeping at police stations. Immediately, I was like, wow, you know what? That's an opportunity, because they can't always live at a police station. They can't always live at, some other government facility. They need housing.
Yeah.
Let's find a way for us to provide housing for these individuals and take that burden off of the state somehow. And we provide that housing for them. So that's one thing that we're looking into now. It's basically the same program that we're working with the kids, but now we're just do it for families that need affordable housing.
Yeah, that's great, and it's amazing. There are quite a few resources out there that oftentimes people just are completely unaware of. Marcus, one of the things that you mentioned, I think it's important, whether it be a lot of things that you've done in real estate. I think if you can position yourself as the problem solver, there's a demand for somebody that's, solving that problem. So whether it be distressed sellers that need to sell desperately, you're able to help them with that problem. And it's a win-win situation. And it sounds like same thing on, what you're doing with the shared living spaces as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I always try and hang my hat on, Keith, is, and this was something that my attorney told me a while back, actually two things. He said, he who can solve the biggest problems get the biggest payout.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
the bigger the problem that you can solve, the bigger the check. And then he always tell me is that, Marcus, if this problem wasn't there, somebody would have already bought this property. Right? So, I used to always tell him, hey, Peter, I'm bringing you another deal with tons of hair on it. It's this and it's liens and it's, probate. And he was like, look, the more hair is on it, the more we can make off of the property and the better we can help, the seller in return. Because I always tell people, as a real estate investor, yes, we want to make money. We want to be profitable because we are running a business at the end of the day, but also we want to be able to do social good. We don't want to just look at a bank account and see this bank account is growing and growing and growing, but what are you contributing to society in order to impact the lives of someone that's around you? Right now, everybody talk about, hey, I want to be an influencer. I want to be an influencer. I want to be an influencer. Well, you can't influence someone if you haven't impacted them in their lives in some way. And that's what we're all about. We're about providing some sort of resource to impact that family, that child, that individual, because we know as long as we impact them, we'll be able to influence them and help them, better position themselves in the future.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. At the end of the day, people they want a safe place to be able to live. They want a nice place to be able to live. And, it sounds like you're providing that, to them. So, that's great. And so tell me a little bit about maybe what's next for Marcus on the horizon. Obviously, it's kind of a weird environment right now with interest rates and everything, but where do you see yourself, 5, 10 years from now?
You know, we're gonna keep buying, Keith. We're gonna keep buying assets because we know we're in it for the long term. We're in
Yeah.
it for long term gain and growth, and it's not just for us, but it's for my kids and my kids' kids. So if we buy now at 8%, as long as the numbers work, we know in 10 years, 15 years, there's going to be some appreciation, even if there's not any appreciation and it stays flat. As long as we run our numbers right today, there's going to be a payout tomorrow and we're going to impact somebody today and tomorrow. So, we're just looking to acquire more properties, continue the shared living niche that we're working in, and just continue to help people, man. That's kind of our goal and what we're into.
Yeah. Okay. And then, as far as maybe in your bio, it mentions that you're a husband, that you got kids. Tell us a little bit about what you do when you're not doing real estate.
Man, you know what? Quite a bit. My son, he's a football player, so I'm always, helping him, going to football games, football practices, traveling the country, taking him to different colleges so he can, see exactly where he wants to go. And my daughter, she's competition dance, so we really keep busy. And there's always a honey-do list, right, Keith? There's
Sure.
always something that you have to do, even when you don't expect it. You think you got a Saturday free, and nope, you got 10 things on this list you need to get accomplished. So I just enjoy my family and spending time with them. And my whole goal is to make sure that they have, you know, what they need for the future and for them to build on top of that. So again, it's just laying that foundation for them for the future.
Yeah. And it's neat that with your current, with the work that you're doing, you're actually working with family, your own family, in addition to, some of these other families.
Hmm.
So how many
Absolutely.
brothers and sisters do you have? And, are they all involved with the nonprofit, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a family affair, right? It's I have one biological brother and then I have a couple of adopted brothers, and we all work, with one goal, one mission, and that's to help people. And that's what we're doing with our nonprofit. We have the daycares, we have the residential facilities, we have the therapeutic clinical arm of it. So my older brother, he's the executive director of the social service agency and arm of it. I'm over the real estate arm of it. And my younger brothers, they work consistently, and being a part of the management team and administrative team to make sure that we're building and we're going in the right direction. And my mom, she's still there, 80 years old. She's the founder. She's still, what my mom is really, really good at, Keith? And I really had to sit back and I had to listen to her. She is a beast at raising money.
Is she?
You know,
Okay.
yes,
Nice.
it is amazing. She tells her story and she can raise, for example, she just had land donated to her,
Oh,
and it was land for a new project, and we're just working, and we let her go out. She's 80 years old. She drives her own car. She's very, very independent, high functioning. And she goes and she meets with bankers. She meets with, presidents of companies, principals, everything like that. She's a go-getter. And I know that's where we get it from. And, my father, he passed away about 3 years ago, and he was the hard foundation when it comes to the work ethic. And she had more of the entrepreneurial spirit. So we got it from both sides. You got to be an entrepreneur, but you got to work hard, in order to be successful. So, thank God for my parents.
yeah, for sure. And so tell me maybe a little bit about, how people can find out more about you, Marcus. And then I've got a couple other questions for you if you have just a little bit longer.
Sure, sure. I'm on all social media platforms at MRCS Maloney. So that's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Threads. And then I have my own podcast, the We Love Equity Real Estate show that's hosted on all podcast platforms. And then my YouTube channel. I give away so much. You can go to MRCS Maloney on YouTube as well, or got everything in one place. You can go to marcusemaloney.com. That's marcusemaloney.com, and get tons of free information. And if you want to sit down and chat with me, over Zoom, I do a 15-minute free consultation because I just genuinely like to see how I can give back to those who are just getting started, or those who are looking to switch from one niche in real estate to another. So they can go to marcusemaloney.com.
Perfect. Well, I got two questions that I ask every guest, and one would be,
Sure.
if you were just starting out in your investment journey, what advice could you give somebody who's just starting out in their investment journey?
Sure. I would tell them, don't make decisions based on your bank account, right? Don't worry about what you have in the bank. Just go out there and start networking and meeting people, and your bank account will grow from there. So you want to provide service. You want to lead with service, because people are out there looking for people that they can help. So again, from my position, I went in, my mentor, he needed someone to help with acquisitions. If I wasn't out there, hitting the streets and turning over every stone, I wouldn't have found him and wouldn't have been able to receive from him. So I gave first, and then I received on the back end. So always lead, with service. And again, don't make decisions based on what's in your bank account.
Yeah, I think those are two just great advice for sure. And it's harder to do than it may sound, right? I mean, if you don't have enough money in the bank, trying to decide what your next move is can be difficult. But I think it's great advice, and love the fact that you mentioned bringing value, because you bring value to people, and that kind of, it's your opportunity to join with them in a deal and to learn something new. So what about, Marcus, what about a book recommendation? Anything that you've read recently, or that you would recommend to somebody? It doesn't have to be real estate related, but just whatever you got.
Sure. You know what? My go-to book is, outside of the Bible, my go-to book is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Yeah.
It's about, knowing what you're trying to accomplish and how you're going to get there, and knowing that there's going to be roadblocks in front of you. But if you persist, you have tenacity, and you follow that dream, you'll accomplish that and you'll get there. So that's a book recommendation that I want to refer to your listeners, Keith.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the first time that somebody's recommended that on this show. So, but I love the book myself. I'm a big believer in it, and actually can remember years ago showing my sales team a motivational video with Will Smith, and he talks about The Alchemist on there, and that's why I was like, what's this Alchemist book that he's talking about? But yeah. So, well, Marcus, I've really enjoyed our time together. I know you've brought a ton of value to our listeners, and just really want to thank you for being a guest on The Wealth Flow.
Thank you, Keith. I really appreciate it. And to the listeners of The Wealth Flow, just continue to absorb what Keith is doing and go out there and start putting it into action, right? Because it don't take long for you to reach that next milestone. You just have to put one foot in front of the other and just keep going and just don't stop.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Marcus. We're going to call it a show.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.